Imagine reaching a point where people no longer take your presence for granted. They stop assuming you'll always be there. They begin to feel something they never expected, the fear of losing access to you. That fear doesn't come from manipulation, begging, or playing childish games. It comes from becoming so valuable, so emotionally disciplined, and so impossible to predict that your absence creates a silence louder than your words. Most people spend their lives chasing approval, explaining themselves, and trying to be chosen. But the moment you stop needing validation, the balance of power changes. The person who can walk away without resentment, protect their time without guilt, and remain calm under pressure becomes the one everyone secretly wants to keep. In this video, you'll uncover the hidden psychological principles that make people respect your value, question your absence, and realize what they're about to lose before it's too late. These are timeless lessons about self-control, mystery, emotional strength, and quiet power. The same principles history's most influential minds understood. Watch until the end, because the final lesson reveals why the people who fear losing you are never controlled by your words. They're controlled by the version of you that no longer needs anyone's permission to be powerful. Think about the people you have valued the most throughout your life. Was it the person who constantly demanded your attention, always explained themselves, and never seemed capable of walking away? Or was it the individual who carried themselves with quiet confidence, who never chased approval, and who made you realize that having them in your life was a privilege rather than a guarantee? Human nature has not changed for thousands of years. We are instinctively drawn toward what feels valuable, and we often recognize value only when it is not desperately trying to convince us that it exists. This is where most people unknowingly destroy their own influence. They believe the answer is to give more, text more, explain more, apologize more, and make themselves endlessly available. They think constant presence creates stronger bonds. In reality, it often produces the opposite effect. The mind quickly adapts to anything that becomes predictable. What is always available begins to feel ordinary. What feels ordinary is eventually taken for granted. Observe successful leaders, respected individuals, and those who naturally command attention. They do not spend their energy convincing people to stay. They are deeply committed to their own purpose. Their time has value because it is invested carefully, not handed out freely. This isn't arrogance, it isn't coldness, it is discipline. They understand that every unnecessary explanation, every act of desperation, and every attempt to force affection slowly weakens the image others have of them. There is a powerful psychological principle at work here. People protect what they believe they could lose. They become attentive when they realize something meaningful is no longer guaranteed. This doesn't mean disappearing to manipulate emotions or creating artificial distance through childish games. Those tactics eventually expose insecurity. Real scarcity is different. It is the natural result of building a life so full of purpose that your attention becomes selective. You are busy creating, learning, growing, and moving towards something greater than the approval of any single person. When someone notices that your happiness does not depend on their validation, the dynamic begins to shift. Suddenly, they cannot predict your every move. They realize you are making decisions based on your principles rather than your fear of rejection. That uncertainty commands respect because it reflects inner strength. People trust those who have control over themselves far more than those who desperately seek control over others. The greatest mistake you can make is believing that chasing someone proves love, loyalty, or commitment. More often than not, it proves dependence. Dependence silently transfers power into someone else's hands. Once another person realizes you will tolerate anything simply to keep them close, they stop valuing your presence because they assume it will never disappear. Certainty removes urgency. Scarcity creates appreciation. Instead, learn to become completely invested in your own growth. Build skills that make you confident. Develop habits that strengthen your character. Create goals that excite you more than temporary validation ever could. Fill your days with purpose instead of obsession. The more complete your life becomes, the less you feel compelled to chase anyone. Ironically, that is the moment people begin chasing you. Not because you demanded their attention, but because your presence has become something rare, calm, and undeniably valuable. Never forget this truth. The moment you stop chasing is the moment your value begins to speak for itself. Once you stop chasing people and begin valuing your own time, something even more important must change. It is not enough to become less available if your emotions are still controlled by everyone around you. Many people appear confident on the outside, but the smallest criticism, a delayed reply, an insult, or a moment of rejection completely unsettles them. They may hide it for a while, but eventually their emotions reveal what they truly fear. The person who cannot control their reactions unknowingly hands control of their life to others. Human beings are constantly observing one another. Long before they trust your words, they study your emotional patterns. They notice what frustrates you, what makes you defensive, and what causes you to lose your composure. Every emotional outburst becomes information. Every unnecessary reaction tells people exactly where your weaknesses lie. Whether in friendships, relationships, or professional environments, those who understand human nature know that the easiest person to influence is the one whose emotions are easy to predict. This is why emotional discipline is one of the rarest forms of power. It is not about becoming cold, emotionless, or pretending that nothing affects you. Quite the opposite. It means feeling everything without allowing those feelings to dictate your behavior. Anger may rise, disappointment may sting, and betrayal may cut deeply, but wisdom lies in choosing your response instead of becoming a prisoner of your first impulse. Consider what happens during conflict. Most people rush to defend themselves. They interrupt, explain, justify, and desperately try to win the argument before the other person finishes speaking. They believe that speaking more gives them greater control. In reality, every unnecessary word often weakens their position. The calmer individual creates uncertainty. Silence forces people to think. Patience makes others question themselves. A measured response carries far more weight than an emotional explosion. History consistently rewards those who remain composed under pressure. The leader who stays calm during chaos inspires confidence. The negotiator who refuses to react impulsively gains leverage. The individual who can endure criticism without collapsing earns lasting respect. Emotional stability sends a silent message. My peace cannot be purchased, and it cannot be stolen. There is another reason this matters. Emotionally reactive people become predictable. Once someone learns how to provoke you, they no longer need strength to control you. They simply press the same emotional button again and again. Some people will intentionally criticize you, ignore you, or test your patience just to measure your level of self-control. They are not always trying to hurt you. Sometimes they are simply discovering whether you possess genuine confidence or borrowed confidence that disappears under pressure. Real confidence does not rush to prove itself. It listens more than it speaks. It observes before acting. It understands that not every accusation deserves an answer, not every insult deserves a response, and not every battle deserves your energy. The strongest people conserve their emotional resources because they know that attention is one of life's most valuable currencies. As your emotional discipline grows, something remarkable begins to happen. People stop seeing you as someone who can be easily shaken. They become more thoughtful with their words because they cannot predict your reaction. They begin to respect your presence because your calmness communicates strength that cannot be faked. And when people realize they can no longer control your emotions, they begin to question whether they can afford to lose someone with that level of inner stability. Remember this above all else. Whoever masters their emotions can never be mastered by anyone else. Now, once you've stopped chasing people and learned to master your emotions, you arrive at a deeper truth. These two qualities alone are powerful, but they are not enough. If you truly want people to recognize your worth, you must become someone who cannot easily be replaced. This is where most people fail, not because they lack talent, but because they stop growing. They become comfortable, predictable, and dependent on the belief that loyalty alone will keep others close. Human nature rarely rewards comfort, it rewards value. Look carefully at the people who leave a lasting impression wherever they go. They are not always the loudest, the richest, or the most naturally gifted. What separates them is that they are constantly evolving. Every year they know more, see more, and become more capable than they were before. Their confidence is not built on empty affirmations. It is built on evidence. They have invested thousands of quiet hours into developing skills, strengthening their character, and expanding their understanding of the world. That kind of confidence cannot be borrowed, and it cannot be imitated. The greatest mistake you can make is building your identity around another person's attention. The moment your happiness depends on someone else's approval, you surrender the freedom to define yourself. You begin making decisions based on fear instead of purpose. You avoid difficult conversations because you fear rejection. You compromise your standards because you fear being left behind. Slowly, without realizing it, your life revolves around protecting a relationship instead of protecting your own growth. But there is another path. Imagine waking up every morning with goals that have nothing to do with impressing anyone. Imagine becoming so focused on your mission that every day adds another layer to your confidence. You read because knowledge gives you an advantage. You train your body because discipline sharpens your mind. You improve your craft because excellence creates opportunities. You learn patience because wisdom outlasts emotion. Day after day, these small choices reshape your identity until your value becomes undeniable. People notice this transformation even when you never speak about it. They see the way you carry yourself. They recognize that your conversations have more depth. Your decisions become firmer. Your standards become clearer. Your energy changes because you are no longer searching for someone to complete you. You have become complete through your own efforts. That quiet sense of purpose is deeply attractive because it is rare. Most people chase attention. Very few chase mastery. There is a powerful psychological effect at work here. People rarely fear losing someone who stands still. They fear losing the person who keeps moving forward. Growth creates momentum, and momentum creates value. When others see that your life continues to expand with or without their approval, they begin to realize that your future is becoming increasingly difficult to catch. Suddenly, your presence feels less ordinary. They understand that if they fail to appreciate you today, someone else eventually will. Do not misunderstand this principle. The goal is never to become successful, merely to make others regret losing you. That is still a form of dependence because your motivation remains tied to someone else's opinion. The true objective is to become so committed to your own development that outside validation becomes unnecessary. Ironically, that is exactly when respect begins to arrive naturally. People are drawn toward those who possess direction because direction signals strength, and strength inspires trust. Never allow your life to become smaller just to make someone else comfortable. Expand your mind, sharpen your skills, raise your standards, and continue growing even when no one is applauding. The people who truly matter will either grow alongside you or recognize the privilege of walking beside someone who refuses to stand still. Because in the end, the person who is always becoming more can never be easily replaced. By this point, you've stopped chasing, you've learned to govern your emotions, and you've committed yourself to becoming someone who is constantly growing. But there is another principle that quietly separates those who hold lasting influence from those who quickly become predictable. It is the ability to preserve a sense of mystery, not by pretending to be someone you're not by playing manipulative games, but by understanding that people value what they continue to discover. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that complete transparency creates deeper respect. They reveal every thought the moment it appears, announce every future plan before taking the first step, and explain every decision as if they owe the world constant access to their inner life. At first, this may seem like honesty, but over time, it removes something essential: curiosity. When there is nothing left to discover, attention naturally begins to drift. Human nature is driven by unanswered questions. Think about the books you couldn't put down or the conversations that stayed in your mind long after they ended. They captured your attention because they left room for imagination. The mind naturally seeks to complete what feels unfinished. This same principle operates in everyday relationships. People become more invested when they are invited to observe your actions rather than being handed every answer in advance. Notice how truly confident individuals carry themselves. They rarely feel the need to announce every achievement or defend every choice. They understand that results speak with a voice far louder than promises. While others are busy talking about what they intend to become, they quietly become it. Months later, their progress surprises everyone, not because it happened overnight, but because they spent their energy building instead of broadcasting. There is another advantage to speaking less about your plans. Every time you reveal a goal too early, you expose it to unnecessary opinions. Some people will doubt you, others will discourage you. A few may even imitate your ideas before you've had the chance to bring them to life. Protecting your vision is not secrecy born from fear, it is discipline born from wisdom. A seed grows strongest beneath the soil before it ever reaches the sunlight. In the same way, your ambitions often need silence before they need applause. This principle also changes the way people experience your presence. When every conversation is filled with endless explanations, predictable stories, and constant updates, others begin to assume they already know everything about you. But when you speak with intention, when your words are measured instead of excessive, each conversation carries more weight. People listen more carefully because they know you do not speak merely to fill silence. They begin paying attention to your actions because your behavior reveals more than your words ever could. Be careful, however, not to confuse mystery with emotional manipulation. There is a difference between maintaining healthy privacy and deliberately creating confusion. The first reflects confidence. The second reflects insecurity. You are not withholding information to make people anxious. You are simply refusing to make your entire identity public property. Every person deserves a private world where dreams are protected, ideas are refined, and growth takes place without constant observation. As you begin living this way, something subtle changes. People think about you long after you've left the room. They become curious about what you're building, where you're going, and what you'll accomplish next. They stop judging you by your promises and start measuring you by your results. That shift is powerful because respect grows strongest when it is rooted in observation rather than persuasion. Remember this. Reveal your progress through your actions, not your announcements, and let your silence create the curiosity your words never could. Everything we've explored leads to this final principle, and without it, every lesson before it remains incomplete. You can stop chasing people, you can master your emotions, you can build an extraordinary life and maintain an air of quiet mystery. But if deep down you are still terrified of losing people, then fear will eventually expose you. Human beings have an incredible ability to sense hidden desperation. You may disguise it with confidence, but your decisions will reveal it. The way you tolerate disrespect, the way you compromise your values, and the way you hesitate to walk away will quietly tell others what you are afraid of. This is the greatest paradox of human relationships. The harder you cling to someone, the more pressure you place on the connection. Fear becomes invisible weight. It shows up in overthinking, in seeking constant reassurance, in saying yes when you want to say no, and in sacrificing your dignity just to avoid being abandoned. At first, these actions may seem harmless, but over time, they change the balance of the relationship. You stop acting from strength and begin acting from fear. Real power begins the moment you accept a simple truth. Not everyone is meant to stay. Some people enter your life to teach you. Some remain because they genuinely value you. Others leave because your paths no longer align. Fighting this reality only creates suffering. Accepting it creates freedom. Think about the strongest people you've ever met. They cared deeply about others, but they never begged anyone to stay. They loved without losing themselves. They gave without becoming dependent. They respected others without abandoning their own standards. If someone repeatedly crossed their boundaries or refused to appreciate their presence, they walked away, not with bitterness or revenge, but with quiet certainty. They understood that protecting their self-respect was more important than preserving a relationship built on imbalance. This does not mean becoming emotionally distant or treating people as though they are disposable. In fact, it means valuing relationships more deeply because they are based on mutual respect rather than fear. When two people choose each other freely without guilt or desperation, the connection becomes stronger. There is trust because neither person is trying to control the other. There is respect because both know they have the strength to stand on their own if life ever pulls them in different directions. The irony is impossible to ignore. The person who is least afraid of being alone often attracts the healthiest relationships. Why? Because confidence is reassuring. Emotional independence removes pressure. People feel that they are wanted, not needed. There's a profound difference between those two words. Being needed can feel like a burden. Being genuinely wanted feels like a choice, and choice is the foundation of lasting respect. As you continue through life, you will lose opportunities, friendships, and relationships. That is not a sign that you have failed. It is evidence that life is moving. Every ending creates space for something new, provided you have the courage not to cling to what is already slipping away. Never measure your worth by who leaves. Measure it by the person you become after they do. When you stop fearing loss, you stop making fearful decisions. Your boundaries become stronger. Your standards become clearer. Your confidence becomes quieter but far more convincing. And without asking for attention, you begin to command it. People recognize that your presence is a choice, not a necessity. They understand that if they fail to value you, you will continue your journey with the same calm determination that brought you this far. That is the ultimate psychological shift. You no longer seek to make people fear losing you. Instead, you become a person whose integrity, purpose, and self-respect are so rare that your absence naturally carries weight. There are no games, no manipulation, and no desperate attempts to prove your value. There is only the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly who they are and refuses to trade that identity for anyone's approval. And remember this above all. The moment you no longer fear losing others is the moment others begin to understand the true value of losing you. Before you leave, remember this. The greatest power is never forcing people to fear losing you. It is becoming so disciplined, so valuable, and so impossible to replace that your absence speaks louder than your presence ever could. Stop chasing, stop explaining, stop begging for attention. Invest in your mind, your purpose, and your self-respect. The world always notices the person who walks with quiet confidence. If this message challenged the way you think, don't let it end here. Subscribe, join this journey of mastery, and return for the next lesson. Because your greatest weapon has never been controlling others. It has always been mastering yourself. As we come to the end of this journey, remember one truth that changes everything. People don't fear losing those who chase them. They fear losing those who know their own worth. The moment you stop seeking validation, control your emotions, protect your peace, and dedicate yourself to constant growth, your entire presence changes. You no longer need to convince anyone to stay. Those who truly value you will choose to remain, and those who don't were never meant to walk beside you. Real power isn't loud. It doesn't beg, threaten, or manipulate. It moves in silence, acts with purpose, and lets results speak louder than promises. The strongest person in any room is the one who cannot be controlled by approval, rejection, or fear. If today's lesson gave you a new perspective on human nature and personal power, make sure to subscribe and join this community of thinkers dedicated to mastering psychology, influence, and self-discipline. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know in the comments which lesson challenged your thinking the most. Until next time, remember this. Asterisk, the day you stop fearing people's departure is the day your presence becomes unforgettable.